What's going on, guys? Welcome to another edition of Fire and Ice. I'm Andy Flint. Obviously, I'm firing this duo. We got a good show for you tonight. We're going to be talking March Madness, mostly the Sweet 16. We'll probably break into a little Final Four stuff. With me, I have the other half of the duo, Gary Freeze, a.k.a. Ice.
Just call me George Gervin, right?
I don't know if we're going to call you George Gervin, man.
Yeah, let's not go that far.
So what's going on, man?
I'm excited for tomorrow. Last weekend was nuts. We talked about it last time before last week, and we predicted it'd be a little crazy. I don't think we predicted it'd be that crazy. I mean, 16 taking down 1. We sort of, everybody out there has kind of been hoping for it to happen at some point. Did not think it was going to be Virginia. I thought maybe Penn could push Kansas, and I thought Xavier was kind of the most vulnerable 1 seed. But to see what UMBC was able to do to Virginia was absurd. It was awesome to watch.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about it, and I think we all came to that conclusion. I thought Kansas was in the most trouble overall. You and Raul, and I even agreed Virginia was definitely in the trouble the quickest. But yeah, nobody had the first round. I mean,
not that quick.
You know, and I think the teams that we thought might beat Virginia already went home as well. Arizona was one of those. I know Raul harped on that a little bit, and I didn't disagree with him, even though I did say to watch out for UB, and I did pick UB. I ended up going with UB. But yeah, it was pretty nuts. I think we did get down to a pretty good Sweet 16. And, despite a lot of the upsets, there are some powerhouse teams left. We have some 1s, we have 2s, 3 seeds, things of that nature. So let's just jump right into it, man. The high dive, swan dive stuff. The first question is how bad is your bracket? And I'm talking to everybody. I'm going to let Gary answer this, but how bad is your personal bracket?
I assume that there's a lot of people out there that can say the bracket is it's a disaster, right? I'm not one of them, fortunately. I've still got 3 Final Four teams alive. I had UNC. Man, they looked like poop. And I didn't really expect them to go out like that, but Texas A&M looked really good. But my Sweet 16, I ran out of red ink. I swear. I have so many deep run teams available. I don't understand how my Sweet 16 looks as bad as it is. I have like 9 teams right, and 6 of them are still alive for me for the Elite 8. I don't know how, but my bracket's in okay shape. I still have my champion alive. I still have my other finalists alive. And like I said, 3 out of 4 Final Four teams left. I'm looking all right.
And I'm looking the opposite of all right. I got Villanova. I mean, as far as Final Four, I actually filled out 2 brackets this year. I had Villanova winning 1, which I have to do. Being a Villanova fan, I feel like, every year when it's within the realm of possibility, I'm always going to have a sheet that has them. I said it a little bit last week. I do think that, this might be their best shot at it, not only because of the craziness that is the tournament thus far, but they actually have a couple of legitimate NBA prospects on their roster for once. I had Michigan State winning my other one. And just real quick, let me talk about the disaster that was Michigan State, because we were talking about this right before the show. But you barely beat Bucknell, and then you can't even score 55 against Syracuse. And we talked about Syracuse's own defense and the lip service of these coaches talking about the zone and how it's tough. I don't give a team like Michigan State a pass on that. I wouldn't give Duke a pass. I wouldn't give UNC a pass. I wouldn't give Kentucky a pass. I'm not doing it for Michigan State. But I have a feeling we'll crawl into that a little bit more. I think we should go over the Sweet 16 stuff first. We'll give our predictions of who we think is going to win each game. We'll start with the South. In the South, we have Kentucky and Kansas State, and we have Nevada and Loyola Chicago. Gary, who do you got? Make me proud.
Well, I'll start with Kentucky K-State. Obviously, I've got Kentucky. I've got them winning it all. I I just think that the way they've been playing defense over the last few months is just that's the difference maker for me. They've got so many athletes. Calipari's figured out this one and done thing. He's always bringing in like 5 studs and somehow convinces them all to want to play together. And Coach K is getting close to that level. And Kentucky's just got too much size, too much athleticism for K-State. The Wildcats, the ones that play in Manhattan, not Lexington, have had a good run. They really have. It's been an incredibly surprising run for them. I didn't think they were going to get out of the first round, and we talked about it on the last episode of the Backyard Blitz. I thought Creighton was going to win, and I thought Creighton was going to give Virginia a run. Now, K-State ended up knocking off Creighton, and K-State knocked off the ultimate Cinderella. But I think those 2 wins, which are 2 more than I expected, that's it for K-State. And I think Kentucky's kind of going to roll in this one. They've had a couple tighter games than they might have wanted, but I think they're going to win this one by double digits. Moving on to Loyola Chicago and Nevada. This is a battle of Cinderellas. And in Nevada, they've got a lot of talent on that team. They've got a great coach, a guy who's coached in the NBA, and Eric Musselman. But I think they're more of a Cinderella because of the way they've won their games. Being down 14 in the first round, being down 22 to Cincinnati with what felt like maybe 30 seconds left in the game. It was insane, the run that they went on. This is the toughest one for me to pick right now because I like what the Ramblers have done. They're everyone's darling, winning late against Miami and Tennessee. A couple of last second shots that moved them on in both of those games. But Nevada's had 2 really dramatic come from behind wins, and I think maybe they've exhausted their March Madness. So I'm taking Loyola, the 11 seed, to move on to the Elite 8. They've been solid. They've had some drama at the end of games, but they've been in their games from start to finish. Give me the Ramblers, man.
And I'll touch Kentucky real quick. First, I'm going with Kentucky. I had this matchup, Kentucky, and as bad as my bracket is, I had Kentucky and K-State. K-State and Creighton was a coin flip for me. Something about K-State, and I had them knocking off the big dogs here in that last matchup to then meet Kentucky. But I'm rolling with Kentucky too. And the Loyola Chicago Nevada game, it almost, and you kind of touched on this without actually saying it, it almost seems like Nevada's the underdog, even though they're not the underdog in this game. I mean, you're talking the 7 seed versus the 11 seed, and I feel like Nevada seems as if they're the underdog, but I'm going with Nevada. Probably something to do a little bit with the fact that I've caught both their games. I mean, the way they played out, it's one of those things that kind of gets you pumped up. And also, I was pretty high on Cincinnati, had Cincinnati as a Final Four team, and they blew it up for me. So, Kentucky and Nevada, that's my picks. Let's head on over to the East. And we have Villanova and West Virginia and Purdue and Texas Tech. Gary, what do you got going on here?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you some props for your Villanova pick to win it because, man, they've looked the part. They've blown out 2 teams on their way to the Sweet 16, and they look so good on both ends of the floor. Bridges he's nuts. The best 2-way player in college basketball, and he's going to go to the NBA, and he's going to have a great career. They've scored a lot. They've played great defense. Their half-court press where Bridges picks up the ball at half-court is it's phenomenal, and it's tough to score on because he's so long. It's tough to move the ball around the top of the key, and you just can't get any shots. So I think Villanova's got way too much. I think press Virginia is going to try to disrupt the offense. I don't think they're going to be able to, man. Villanova is just so efficient and so effective that I don't give them much of a chance. I think it's going to be a little closer, though. Nova's going to get a little bit of a test from West Virginia. By test, I mean they're probably only going to win by single digits, so maybe 7, 8, 9 points. But I think Nova's going to win fairly comfortably. Texas Tech and Purdue, this one scares me because I made it known I've got Purdue in the Final Four, and losing Isaac Haas is a big deal. He's probably, I don't know, best 2 or 3 big men in college basketball right now. He's going to be dearly missed, honestly. Purdue lost him, and they survived against Butler. Butler's a tough squad. Texas Tech, I thought to start the tournament was a little overseeded, but I got to give some props to the committee. And you know I hate doing this. Texas Tech was legitimately a 3 seed. They've played really well. But the committee still owes me a couple for Oklahoma and Missouri. They shouldn't have been in there. So I'm going to take Purdue over Texas A&M, but I don't feel good about it.
Yeah, and it's hard to. And I'll start with the Villanova one. One name I want to talk about is Dante DiVincenzo, because this dude, it's such a luxury in even pro basketball when you have a bench player who can come in and provide you with starter numbers. And not only does the kid come in and he can be the best offensive player on the court, but he's doing it, with Bridges. And it's crazy to see to me. Villanova doesn't often have players like this. The 3 ball for Villanova has been deadly. We talked a bit about scoring and the way they're putting the ball in the hoop, and they're scoring somewhere around 85 points a game. But I will say this, if I want to be a little bit of a critic, Virginia's scoring more like 90 a game in their 2 games. So I do think that, this is going to be a test for the big dogs in Villanova. But I got to see him coming out with it. That's my squad. I was very impressed with the way they handled Colin Sexton. That was that tough Alabama team, and I'm ready to see more, but I'm a little bit worried being a Villanova fan. It always sucks to be like the fan. You want to see these great games and you want to get into the madness, but at the same time, you're like worried about being crushed. I'll tell you what, a couple years ago when Villanova won the national championship, I was actually doing the No Look Pass podcast that I used to have with my buddy Frank Santos, our NBA podcast, literally live on air when that all went down, when the big 3 happened and they won the game. But yeah, so I'm taking Villanova. Obviously, it was no surprise here. I got long-winded on the inevitable conclusion. I'm going to go with Purdue over Texas Tech. I think you covered it pretty well. I told you, before I think we even talked about any of this on the air last week, that I thought Purdue was really the team that stood in the way of Villanova the most. I still believe that. Villanova's looked really good. But, yeah, I think Purdue's going to be tough. Nothing against Texas Tech. I think they played well. Let's move on to the West.
Well, real quick before you move on, one last thing. About halfway through the season, I thought Purdue was the most complete team. And again, I'll reinforce the fact that you should fear Purdue if you're a Nova fan. But Isaac Haas went down. Nova's been playing just complete basketball. My statement that Purdue was the most complete team is in jeopardy. I think Nova right now looks like the most complete team in basketball.
Yeah, and I mean, I feared Alabama. If I'm being honest with you, like Alabama was not the team I wanted to see in the next round. But
they shot the lights out in the first round.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that's kept Villanova is just the ability to they're not afraid to shoot the 3 in bunches, and they're living with it and they're killing it. And you have the smart point guard play of Brunson, and you have Dante, like I said, coming in off the bench, and they're kind of like their own fire and ice combo there. And then Bridges, wraps it all up. I don't want to gush too much. I mean, I'm going to sound like a schoolgirl here. So in the West, we have Florida State and Gonzaga, and then we have, I just like saying Gonzaga, Texas A&M, and Michigan. What do you got happening here, man?
Oh, I mean, Florida State and Gonzaga, I've got Gonzaga, but this is another one I don't feel really good about because Gonzaga's been shaky in both of their games. They haven't looked like the typical Mark Few team that, they get to a point in a game and they start to assert themselves. They just ain't been able to do that yet. And Florida State's looked good. They knocked Xavier off. They looked good doing it. They were in the game the whole – it was a great game to watch. And Florida State asserted themselves down the stretch. So they're no one to bat an eye at. But look back at what they did to the Doo-Doo Tigers in the first round. They were up 22 at the half. And thank you for making me feel vindicated about calling the committee out for that, Florida State. I appreciate it. But I'm going to take Gonzaga in this one because Mark Few is just one of those coaches that always gets his teams up for March. So I got Gonzaga. I don't feel great about it because Florida State looked pretty good. Michigan and Texas A&M, nobody's hotter than the Wolverines right now. and they're on a ridiculous win streak, and they're showing their mettle in the tourney. The dramatic win over Houston was nuts. Houston goes up with a couple of free throws, and then they hit a big three to knock them off. And Texas A&M, they cruised over someone I had in the Final Four. UNC, they made them look like they were amateurs. Honestly, it was that bad that they beat up on them. And UNC looked defeated well before the end of that game. So I am going to take Texas A&M in this one. They're a lot more athletic than I thought when they were entering the tournament. I saw them play like twice this year, and they're not the same team right now. I think they've gotten themselves in a good position for March. So give me the Aggies. It's going to be close, though. It's going to be close, and Michigan could find themselves a round further than they got last year.
Yeah, no, and I agree. These ones were tough for me. This is like, I think this was the part of picking where I really got stuck. I think more so than the other three regions. I'm gonna keep it short and sweet, man. I'm going with Florida State. Shout out to my boy Jonathan Isaac of the Orlando Magic. I'm going with Florida State here over Gonzaga. I have this track record of underestimating Gonzaga, and I'm hoping that's not what I'm doing right now. I feel pretty good about this, if I'm being honest with you. If you if you look at what Florida State's been able to accomplish so far, they obviously took out my Final Four pick of Missouri. Thanks for that. I love you guys. And then they went on and they beat up the 1 seed Xavier. So I'm riding that wave a little bit. And the other matchup, I'm taking Texas A&M as well. I'm kind of shocked. I thought you were going to take Michigan. I felt like we were going to kind of be split on both of these games, but I don't know what it is. And you said athleticism, and I think that's really, the icing on the cake. That's it. That's the pinnacle of this game to me, as far as Texas A&M is concerned. And I do agree that Michigan's hot, and Michigan's one of those teams that can always be scary, but I don't think so. I don't think so this time. I think it's going to be Texas A&M. Let's move on to the Midwest. We have Clemson and Kansas, and then Duke and Syracuse. And before we go, let me just say I'm excited about this Duke and Syracuse game because everybody and their brother's a Duke fan. It's like the Dallas Cowboys. And then, of course, back home is close, and everybody's a Syracuse fan. So I can't wait to see my social media feed with, like, the Duke and Syracuse fans, like, going at each other. It's going to be epic either way. What do you got going on, Gary?
Yeah, I'll start with the Duke-Cuse game. Syracuse has done it again. They got in a controversial way a few years ago and ended up in the Final Four. They had the play-in game. They won 3 games in 5 days. They've won 3 games in 5 days again. They find themselves on the second weekend, and Jim Boeheim just has this way of I don't know, grinding opponents into submission. I'm not sure what it is, but that 2-3 zone for whatever, you brought it up at the beginning. There's no secrets about it anymore. There's the films out there. Everybody should know exactly what they're going to do, but man, he figures out how to put people in the right position, coaches them up, whatever it is, and gets them ready to play that 2-3 zone and just disrupt everybody else. But that being said, Duke's got way too much firepower, man. They've got 4 or 5 shooters they can put on the floor at any given time. They've got some senior leadership. Marvin Bagley Jr. is a stud. He's a stud. And not to mention the other 2 McDonald's All-Americans they've got out there kicking ass. So I've got Duke. It's probably going to be a grinder, though. Probably going to be 61-60, something like that. So it's going to be a low-scoring game. Try not to fall asleep. Kansas-Clemson, I'm not sure how many people would have guessed that Clemson would be one of the few ACC teams that made it to the Sweet 16. They're a football school. You don't typically think about them in terms of basketball, but, man, they're playing some good ball right now. I didn't have them going far. I, in fact, didn't have them winning a single game. I had them getting upset in the first round, and I was wrong, clearly. They're playing well. Kansas wasn't great in either of their wins either. That just seems to be like Bill Self's MO in the tournament. They don't look good, but they find ways to win, right? And I don't think they're going to look that good this game against Clemson either, but I think they're going to get the win. It's going to be close. I wouldn't be surprised if this one came down to somebody's got the ball with a chance to win on a last possession. I've got Kansas close. but don't feel comfortable if you're a Jayhawks fan.
Yeah, it is funny. That's all I could think earlier. Like, is this football? Or are we watching college football? Like, what is Clemson doing? But I'm riding it, man. I'm taking Clemson. I just feel some sort of way about Clemson, about the Tigers, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because I don't see them very, it's not a basketball school, but I like Elijah Thomas, the big guy there. I just feel like, the way this tournament is going, the way these 1 seeds have dropped, it's something. I feel it. I feel it in my heart. I feel like Kansas is going to do the job. They're going to knock off Kansas, or Clemson's going to do the job, knock off Kansas. As far as Duke and Syracuse goes, Marvin Bagley Jr., I don't know if there is a player currently heading for the NBA draft in June who's doing more for their stock than Bagley. I mean, last year we would have talked about him being the first overall pick. That's kind of faded. There was a time where we talked about Trae Young. I think the dust is kind of settled a little bit here. There's been all kinds of guys, and I don't think it hasn't been Bagley for a long time now, but he's playing his way back into that, because I can't help but watch him and think that he looks a little bit like Karl Anthony Towns. I didn't think that before, but it's almost the way he moves on the court. He reminds me a little bit of Towns, and he can shoot the ball. Doesn't really have the range that Towns had. And Ayton's a great player too from Arizona. I think he's the consensus #1 pick right now. He can shoot the ball too, and he does all these things. There's just something about Bagley. Like, sometimes when I watch him move, I'm just like, man, that's cat. So I know some of you guys are going to fire me up for that one, but it's there. I'm telling you right now. And I think they're going to kill Syracuse. Because to me, one of these big-time programs who's in the tournament every single year has to put their foot down on this Syracuse zone defense. Because, listen, Syracuse, it's great. Jim Boeheim, what he does is great. But, like, Syracuse keeps getting in with far less talent and giving these teams runs for their money. And it can't continue to happen. One of these schools has to finally figure it out. And, the system kills these teams. And I just feel like if anybody's going to do it, it's Duke. I did say in our show last week, our first March Madness show, that I thought when they were clicking, Duke looked like the best team in the tournament. And, I still feel the same way. I think of all the teams left, I think Marvin Bagley is the scariest single player there is. So, yeah, I'm taking Duke. And I got a little long-winded there, but
they've certainly got the shooters, though. They could shoot Syracuse out of that zone, and you could be absolutely right. Duke's got the firepower. It's just a matter of whether the shots are falling. Syracuse, they bank on the fact that shots they play the percentages. That's basically what it boils down to.
It's crazy to me. I'm telling you guys right now, these coaches, if you're a big program, you're in the tournament every year, you better figure out that damn zone and do something about it, because it is obnoxious. I mean, it's great for Syracuse, and it's great for Syracuse fans, and I love it from that aspect of watching, like, that zone frustrate these teams to have, like, all these, 4-star, 5-star guys. And it's like, are you crazy? And it's funny from that aspect, but at the same time, when you're playing the other side of the fence, you're like, do something about it. Like, what's going on here? I mean, so, all right, man, let's jump into this next one. And this one's quick. We had our original Final Fours. We can go over that. I'll even start it. My original Final Four was Cincinnati, Villanova, Missouri, and Michigan State. And I'm rocking with one left. That's Villanova. My revised, because we do believe in second chances here at Backyard Sports, my revised Final Four is Duke, Villanova, Clemson, and Duke, Villanova. Who did I say? Oh, yeah. Duke, Villanova, Kentucky, and Florida State. Gary, your original Final Four, since you're rich and you still have your pockets full of Final Four teams. So give us your original and then your revised if it's, I mean, obviously one team's changed, but.
Yeah, I originally had Kentucky, UNC, Purdue, and Duke, and obviously I lost UNC, but I do have three alive still. I've got to stick by them in my pick and pool. We don't allow revisions, halfway through the tournament there. But after
you're getting one. You're going to get one.
I'm going to get one, but I don't get that in my pick and pool though.
Well, sure. I mean, none of us get them in our pick and pool. I mean,
exactly. It'd be nice if we could, right? After every round, just pick new teams.
Absolutely. Everybody. Just me, not everyone else.
Yeah, only one per, and it's me and mine, and you and yours. Yeah,
sure, yeah, absolutely.
But
unless we're in the same one, then it's just me.
Hey, we'll flip a coin.
Okay. I get heads.
Okay. Tails never fails. Anyway, so after seeing Isaac Haas go down, it'd be hard to pick Purdue over Nova. Nova's looked so damn good too. It's hard. They've been the most impressive team thus far. I don't want to give up on Purdue, but because I'm allowed a revisionist approach, I'm going to take Nova because of, the previous points we've made. They've just looked so good. They're good on both ends of the floor. And I think Isaac Haas his absence is going to catch up with Purdue when they've got to play a team that can get to the hoop like Nova can. They don't have the same kind of rim protector. I'm going to stick with Kentucky. I'm going to stick with Duke. And to replace UNC, I'm going to take Gonzaga. I've got Gonzaga beating Florida State. I'm going to take them to win another one and get to the Final Four. So if Haas was still healthy, I'd stick with my original three. But as of right now, I'm going to go with Kentucky, Duke, Nova, and Gonzaga.
All right, yeah, and we don't look down at revisions. It's like, us amateur golfers. You get one mulligan, right? I mean, you get one mulligan per 9 holes, too. I mean, it's a real deal.
I thought you were saying per hole. That's how I shoot 75, man.
I need one mulligan per hole, but I'm not I'm not granted such liberties. So let's jump in, to our last category here. And we're talking surprise teams. We're going to say we each get one surprise team that's in and one surprise team that's out as far as the Sweet 16 is concerned. Gary, we'll start with the in. Gary, what team are you surprised most? I mean, because there might be more than one, obviously. But what team are you most surprised is in the Sweet 16?
Yeah, there are multiple surprises. But for me, the biggest surprise is Nevada, and it's, again, like I said before, it's not because of their talent. It's not because of the team. It's because of the way they've done it. I mean, they came back from 14 down in the first round. Cool. What a comeback. But to come back from 22 down against a team like Cincinnati, that's what's so surprising to me, to see Nevada in the Sweet 16. They did it against good teams. It's not like they were like the 1 seed and they got down to a 16 and then they got down to an 8 or 9 that was like a fringe team. They did it against a couple of good teams. And to see them in the Sweet 16, watching those games is what surprises me. It's not so much my perception of them before the tournament. My surprise team out, and I know it's going to feel like a layup, but hear me out. My surprise team out is Virginia, right? It's not necessarily because they were the 1 seed. It's not necessarily because they seem to have, a path in front of them that should have lent. Once Kansas State beat Creighton, I thought that Virginia should have been a shoo-in. I said in our previous episode that Creighton would be a tough test for them. I didn't think Kansas State would be, but they didn't even get to that point. What's most surprising to me is how much they dominated this year. 2 losses total. They set the record for wins in the ACC this season. They breezed to quite a few wins this year. They just looked the part going into the tournament. I thought they had a tough road. I didn't think that they'd be out first weekend. I really didn't. So that's my surprise, and it's because of the way they played during the regular season.
Yeah, and I mean, we're going to agree on one here. My surprise in is also Nevada, and it has nothing to do with them. Like you said, but I just the way they did it. I mean, they beat a good Texas team. I don't think Texas was crazy, but Texas was good. And then in my opinion, what was a very strong Cincinnati team. And, like you said, you said everything. The way they came back in that game and just to watch, the way it went down. And, I think there was a little bit to talk about with Cincinnati collapsing down the stretch a little bit, but they just hung in there. They went through their game plan. And there's something to be said about these teams and just they go through their motions no matter what. And, that's exactly what Nevada did. And they, they stuck it that way. My surprise out is Michigan State. The biggest thing to me is, we can get past the fact that they're a talented team. One, two, they're a team that's always here. But the biggest thing to me is, and I'm going to catch hell for this. They didn't play anybody. I mean, they tried to lose in the first round of Bucknell. We talked about it earlier. Syracuse, I'm just, again, I think it's great if you're a Syracuse fan or if you're Syracuse. It's great to have that zone that frustrates people. But as far as I'm concerned, if you're a team like Michigan State, you don't get that excuse. And, I'll say the same thing to Duke if they lose because of that. Like, you don't get to hang your hat on that excuse of, oh, their defense, that zone is tough to crack. It's bullshit. I don't want to hear about it. You're too good of a team. And, if Michigan State would have lost firing, they scored 80 points and they still managed to lose Syracuse, it might have been a different story. But when you're scoring in, the low 50s, I ain't got time for that, man. So before we get to our closing statements, we like to do a little thing here at Backyard Sports called Salute to Service, where we honor a soldier who fell in the line. So, Gary, you got the salute to service. Let us hear it.
All right. Tonight's salute to service goes to Sergeant David Johnson, whose unit, Army Special Forces unit, was accompanying 30 Nigerian forces, and they were attacked in densely wooded area by as many as 50 militants. Johnson himself was struck as many as 18 times, and the true number isn't known because his remains were almost unrecognizable when they were recovered. So tonight's salute goes to Sergeant David Johnson of Miami Gardens, Florida.
It's 2 weeks in a row that I'm like out of my drink by the time we get there. Besides the point. So let's real quick, closing statements. Games are coming up tomorrow. Gary, what do you got?
I'm excited to see, the South is just utter chaos, and it's been great. And we talked about how this tournament could be that way. The top 4 seeds are gone. The highest seed that could make the Final Four out of the South is the number 5 seed. And it could easily be number 11 getting to the Final Four. We've got another number 11 that's alive that's been playing really well. If they knock off Duke, Syracuse could end up in the Final Four as well. We could see some really crazy scenarios for the Final Four. I'm super excited. I think this weekend is going to be just absolutely bonkers with some of the matchups, looking at them, the way the teams play. There's going to be a lot of nail biters down the stretch in these games, and don't turn away. Don't turn away, because we've already seen a lot of chaos, and we could be in store for a bunch more for sure.
My closing statement is, I guess he's my new boyfriend, because I'm going to talk about Marvin Bagley. Tune into that game. He's going to drop a cool 20-12 on Syracuse. Big guy's going ham. You're going to see him again in June going into the NBA. I think he's probably, at this current rate, if he continues this, like if Duke goes, to the Final Four, I think that this guy's played himself into a top 3 pick. Obviously it's going to depend on who's sitting there, but just phenomenal. This tournament's really been everything you could ask for. We talked about it, last week. Gary was covering that about how this tournament can blow up, and it has. I mean, Loyola Chicago. I said that I didn't even know who they were. I'd never even heard of that team. I'm not even joking.
I heard something funny on the radio today. I was listening to the DP show, and one of the Danettes had said that he was talking to a group of fans in like a bar, I think, when he was watching one of the games, and he brought up Loyola Chicago, blah 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 blah. They all thought it was Loyola Marymount because nobody knows what the hell Loyola Chicago is. So just to reinforce your point that they're kind of out of nowhere. It's their first tournament win since 1985, if I remember correctly. It's just nobody knows who they are, and even he had to explain, yeah, there's more than one Loyola, and this one's in Illinois.
I mean, yeah, and you get these teams. I mean, the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, like people don't know. I mean, who knew that without Google? I mean, there's some of you guys out there. I know some of you guys knew that. And see, and I didn't know what it is.
And they're in the same conference.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those crazy things. So, we'll be back, I'm sure, for the Elite Eight. Until then, enjoy the Sweet 16. For myself, on behalf of myself, Gary, Raul, who skipped down on us tonight. We're not gonna bag on him too much because we're gonna let him give his own excuse. He was supposed to be here, but he's kind of being a baby. No, I'm just kidding. Until next time, check us out on Facebook. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube page, Backyard Sports, and we're out.